The growing church now had over 3,000 members, and on February 17, 1834, Joseph Smith organized the first High Council of the church. Orson Hyde kept minutes of the meeting, but realized there may have been errors, and Joseph was voted to make necessary corrections. They met to review and accept the inspired revised minutes and procedures revealed to the prophet, and these became Section 102 that restored the ancient order of church councils to be organized throughout Zion's stakes and direct stake presidencies and high councils how to administer discipline to those who committed serious transgressions. This high council consisted of 12 high priests and 1 to 3 presidents, appointed by revelation for the purpose of settling important difficulties which might arise that could not be settled by the church or the bishop's council to the satisfaction of the parties. The first presidency presided over this first high council until stakes were organized, and stake presidencies called to administer the church within their stake boundaries. Joseph called 12 high counselors who accepted their appointments and said they would fill their offices according to the grace of God bestowed upon them. He set them apart and blessed them with wisdom and power to counsel in righteousness upon all subjects that might be laid before them, and charged them to do their duty in righteousness and in the fear of God. The church's first high council went right to work with saints who had serious transgressions. Counselors randomly drew numbers from 1 to 12 that would be the order they would speak in depending on the difficulty of the case. Those with even numbers were responsible to prevent insult and injustice against the accused person, while those with odd numbers watched over the interests of the church. Both the accuser and the accused had the privilege to speak for themselves before the council, and after all evidence was presented, the president gave a decision and called upon the 12 counselors to sanction the vote. Verse 23 assures us that the High Council inquires and obtains the mind of the Lord by revelation in making these difficult decisions. If there was an error, there could be a rehearing of the case, and the decision could be appealed to the first presidency. These disciplinary councils, now known as membership councils, are conducted with great love and mercy, and with an emphasis on unity and the Lord's atonement. In November 1833, the saints were forced to leave Jackson County and found shelter in Clay County before winter came. Parley P. Pratt said, "Hundreds were seen in every direction, in tents or in the open air around fires, while rain descended in torrents. And Lyman White saw 190 women and children driven in sleet across the prairie and could easily follow their trail by the blood flowing from their lacerated feet." Parley and Lyman were sent to Kirtland to seek Joseph's counsel. They reported to the Kirtland High Council on February 24, 1834, and asked how Zion would be redeemed from their enemies. Joseph arose and said he was going to Missouri to help redeem Zion, and 30 to 40 men offered to go with him. The council nominated him to serve as the commander-in-chief of the armies of Israel and the leader of those who volunteered to go and assist in the redemption of Zion. And sometime during that day, the Lord revealed Section 103. The saints wanted to build Zion, but were driven and smitten by wicked people, and the Lord promised to pour out my wrath without measure in mine own time. He suffered their wickedness that their cup might be full, and offered the saints another chance for Zion by revealing the conditions of how they could prevail against their enemies. "Until the kingdoms of the world are subdued under my feet, and the earth is given unto the saints to possess it forever and ever." He told them what would happen if they did not keep his commandments, and said they were driven out because they did not hearken altogether unto the precepts and commandments which I gave unto them. They were set to be a light unto the world, and the saviors of men, but hearkened not to observe his words, and became as salt has lost its savor. Section 103 promised that Zion will come after much tribulation, but if the saints pollute their inheritances, they shall be thrown down, and the Lord will not spare them. The Lord showed the saints how Zion would be reclaimed by his power, and reminded them of his promise to raise up a modern Moses. He called on Joseph to gather an army of Israel to go to Zion that was bought with consecrated money and would be a test to see who was willing to lay down his life for my sake. He appointed 8 people who visited many congregations for several weeks, gathering money, supplies, and volunteers to help in an expedition called the Camp of Israel, and later known as Zion's Camp. One definition of the word camp in an 1828 dictionary also meant army. The Lord asked for 500 more men to march to Zion, knowing they will not always do his will, and only a few might respond to the call. He forbade the march unless at least 100 men were willing to consecrate their lives to Zion, and this revelation tested their resolve. Eventually, 200 men pledged their allegiance to him and his cause. They started on the march to carry supplies to reinforce and strengthen the afflicted saints, help them return to their homes, buy more land, and to maintain order and peace when the Missouri State Militia had escorted them back to Jackson County. Heber Kimball said, "Brother Joseph sent messengers and gathered as many brethren as he could, with what they could spare to go up to Zion and render assistance to our afflicted brethren. We gathered clothing and other necessaries to carry up to our brethren and sisters who had been plundered. The Lord told them, 'All victory and glory is brought to pass unto you through your diligence, faithfulness, and prayers of faith.'" 1834 was a challenging year for the saints. As Joseph prepared to travel to Missouri, he also tried to reorganize the finances of the church that had been seriously affected because of the saints being forced out of Zion, failed business ventures, and the destroyed printing office. He met with church leaders and prayed that the Lord would furnish the means to deliver the united firm from debt, and they might be set at liberty. Members of the Kirtland branch of the firm met on April 10, 1834, and reluctantly agreed to dissolve it and make individual members stewards over its properties. They still owed on these businesses. Bishop Whitney's Ohio store owed its creditors, and the saints' debts continued to grow. Joseph was frustrated with those in the united firm and the saints who chose not to relieve the church's debt and whose covetousness caused many problems. The firm met again on April 23rd, and Joseph received Section 104, directing church leaders to reorganize it, and instructed them concerning the church's properties and how to deal with the saints' debts. The term United Firm was replaced with United Order in this published revelation. The revelation begins with a curse upon the United Firm members, who did not keep their covenants through covetousness and feigned words. The Lord said, "I am not to be mocked in these things, and those who break the covenant to consecrate cannot escape his wrath and the buffetings of Satan." He offered them an opportunity to repent and be accountable for a stewardship given to them. He dissolved the united firm and reviewed the principle of stewardship. "I, the Lord, stretched out the heavens and built the earth, and all things therein are mine." He shares his resources in his own way and said that the earth is full and there is enough and to spare. He reminded us that he is the master who gave mankind the agency to act as stewards of the earth and be held accountable, and commanded the rich to share with the poor according to his gospel law. The united firm cared for the properties the Lord assigned them as stewardships and forgave each other all debts owed to the firm. They still owed debts to their creditors and did what the Lord gave as terms on which he promised to soften the hearts of those to whom you are in debt, until I shall send forth means unto you for your deliverance. They worked diligently, humbly, and with faithful prayers for this deliverance, and were blessed. Many faithful saints donated money, and Joseph and Oliver united in prayer for these blessings to continue, and covenanted to the Lord that they would return 1/10 of what they received, to be bestowed upon the poor of his church, or as he shall command, and that we will be faithful over that which he has entrusted to our care. They asked him to lift the mortgage on the farm upon which the temple was being built, and received an impression that in a short time the Lord would arrange his providences in a merciful manner and send us assistance to deliver us from debt and bondage. 2 months later, as creditors were about to foreclose on the temple site, John Tanner, a New York convert, arrived in Kirtland with $2,000 to redeem the farm. Joseph and his brethren learned to trust the Lord. Many saints consecrated their time and resources to build the Kirtland Temple, and the Lord poured out his blessings upon them. From early May to June 1834, the Camp of Israel, or Zion's Camp, marched 900 miles through 4 states to Missouri, but when they arrived, Governor Daniel Dunklin went back on his promise to help them get back their land with the help of the state militia. The local Missouri citizens were concerned by the rumors they'd heard about the camp's size and purpose, and several hundred gathered and threatened to attack. That evening, a thunderstorm dropped large hailstorms, and the river rose almost 40 feet, frightening the mob and protecting the saints. To calm the angry Missourians, Joseph and others in the camp signed a statement assuring them that they had only come to defend and not attack. Joseph called a council at their camp by the fishing river, and sometime during the meeting he received section 105. The Lord said that were it not for the transgressions of my people, they might have been redeemed even now, and that they had not learned to be obedient to the things he required of them. They were not united according to the union required by the law of the celestial kingdom, and must needs be chastened until they learn obedience. He said that his elders should wait for a little season for the redemption of Zion. So they were prepared, and the saints were taught more perfectly. The Lord said that he did not require at their hands to fight the battles of Zion. And when the men learned that they were not required to fight, some accepted it as the Lord's will, some murmured and were anxious to fight, and others apostatized and left the church. He assured the saints that he had heard their prayers, accepted their offering, and they had been brought thus far for a trial of their faith. Joseph said that the men in Zion's camp sacrificed and learned valuable lessons the Lord wanted them to learn to become his leaders and organize his kingdom. Because not enough saints chose to live the law of consecration and follow the Lord's will, and Joseph's request to send enough men and supplies to redeem Zion, they were told to disband the camp and return to their families in Kirtland or stay in Missouri to help the homeless saints. The Lord told the saints to lift up an ensign and make a proclamation of peace to all people. Zion was still their goal, but it would be postponed for a little season until they learned their duty and doctrine better, increased in size and holiness, and were endowed with power from on high in the house of the Lord in Kirtland, if they were faithful and continued in humility before him. They were told to seek redress for damages done to them, buy more land legally, and to be humble and avoid stirring up contention. The Lord prophesied of a future role when the army of Israel becomes very great, and he will hold them guiltless in taking possession of their own lands, which they have previously purchased with their monies, and of throwing down the towers of mine enemies that may be upon them. They could then spread out over the world to gather Israel, and when the army became very great in size and obedience to the law of consecration, they would regain Zion. Many saints returned to Kirtland, finished the temple, and received the Lord's promised endowment of priesthood power. Joseph hoped the little season to regain Zion would end in a few months, which it could have if the saints had done the things the Lord required of them. Section 105 shows us the way to Zion, by obedience to the law of consecration, and that Zion cannot be built up unless it is by the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. Otherwise I cannot receive her unto myself. If we find ourselves in a little season waiting for Zion, the Lord can end it for us if we prepare ourselves, learn our duty, and what he requires of us, and keep his commandments. And these are sections 102 through 105 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Look for hidden objects throughout this video that are a part of church history or something that would have been common to that time, and read each object's description to learn about life in the 1800s. You can also look for these other images hidden throughout the video. You can download a coloring page and activity puzzles for each section on Etsy at Ponderfun. Visit our Facebook page or ponderfun.com to find more fun things to do, and you can listen to these as a podcast. Please like and share these videos with anyone you think might enjoy them, and I'll keep making new ones. Thanks again for watching, and find some time this week to ponder.